Rebecca Callahan, the newly appointed Chief Executive Officer of Meridian Systems, walked into the executive conference room on the 42nd floor of our Boston headquarters at 8:47 in the morning on a Monday in October, wearing a specific navy blue business suit and carrying a specific manila folder under her left arm. She looked at the 12 senior executives seated around the specific mahogany conference table. She looked at Michael Reeves, the Vice President of Engineering who had, 4 days earlier, fired me from my position as Senior Software Engineering Manager and had me publicly escorted out of the building by security. She looked at Patricia Blackwell, our Human Resources Director, who had signed my termination paperwork Friday afternoon without asking a single question. She looked at Douglas Harrington, our Chief Financial Officer, who had authorized my final paycheck to be reduced by $3,000 for unauthorized absence from work premises. Then she opened the manila folder. She placed a single photograph on the table. The photograph showed me Captain Rachel Foster, United States Army Reserve, standing at parade rest in a specific desert combat outpost outside Camp Buehring, Kuwait, in November of last year. Standing next to me in the photograph, in her own Army combat uniform, wearing the specific rank insignia of an Army Reserve colonel, was Rebecca Callahan. She said, in the specific level voice that new CEOs use when they are about to fire 3 senior executives before their first cup of coffee. Good morning. Before we begin today's leadership meeting, I need to address something that happened in this building on Thursday afternoon. And I need to introduce myself to those of you who may not know that I served as Captain Foster's battalion commander during her 8-month deployment to Kuwait last year. Meridian Systems and me. My name is Rachel Foster. I am 32 years old. I have been a software engineer at Meridian Systems, a mid-sized technology company headquartered in Boston's Seaport District, for 6 years. 18 months ago, I was promoted to Senior Manager of Backend Infrastructure, supervising a team of 14 engineers responsible for the specific enterprise systems that generate approximately 68% of Meridian's annual revenue. I am also a captain in the United States Army Reserve. I want to tell you what that means before I tell you what happened on Thursday, October 3rd. The Army Reserve is not, as many civilians believe, a hobby. It is a legally binding federal commitment. When I signed my commissioning paperwork at Officer Candidate School in Fort Benning, Georgia, in 2015, I signed a contract that obligated me to specific military service for a period of not less than 8 years. That service includes 1 weekend of drill duty every month, 2 weeks of annual training every summer, and, most importantly, the specific requirement to serve on active duty when my unit is called up for federal mobilization. My unit was called up in February of last year. I deployed to Kuwait on February 14, 2024. I returned to Boston on October 11, 2024. I was, during those 8 months, promoted from lieutenant to captain during a specific promotion ceremony conducted at Camp Buehring on July 4th. The officer who presided over my promotion ceremony was my battalion commander, a specific colonel named Rebecca Callahan. I want to describe Rebecca Callahan. She is 54 years old. She graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1992. She served on active duty in the Army for 12 years, deploying twice to Iraq during the initial Operation Iraqi Freedom period. She transitioned to the Army Reserve in 2004, while simultaneously pursuing a specific Master of Business Administration degree from the Sloan School of Management at MIT. She served the following 20 years as a reserve officer while building a specific civilian executive career in the Boston technology sector. She rose through several senior positions at 3 specific Boston area technology companies before being recruited in July of last year to serve as the Chief Executive Officer of Meridian Systems' newly acquired parent company. She would, according to the specific corporate announcement issued on September 15th of this year, begin her role as Meridian's CEO on Monday, October 7th. That was 3 days after Michael Reeves fired me. I did not know, on the morning of Thursday, October 3rd, that Rebecca Callahan was about to become my new CEO. I had not thought about Rebecca Callahan in specific detail since I had returned from Kuwait in October of last year. She and I had, during my 8-month deployment, developed the specific working relationship that battalion commanders and their staff officers develop over extended combat rotations. She had signed my Army Commendation Medal citation at the end of the deployment. She had, at our final unit dinner in Kuwait on October 8th of last year, told me that she believed I had the specific temperament and technical judgment that the specific senior officer corps of the Army Reserve would need in the coming decade. I had said thank you. I had returned to Boston. I had gone back to my job at Meridian Systems. I had not heard from Rebecca Callahan in the 11 months since. I want to describe my boss, Michael Reeves, before I tell you what happened on Thursday. Michael Reeves is 47 years old. He has been the Vice President of Engineering at Meridian Systems for 3 years. He was, before joining Meridian, a mid-level engineering director at 2 different Boston area companies. He does not have a technical background. He has an MBA from Boston University. He does not like the fact that I am an Army Reserve officer. He has never said this directly to my face. He has, however, done specific things over the course of the last 11 months since my return from deployment that have made his position clear to me. When I returned from Kuwait in October of last year, Michael took 23 days to formally reinstate my full salary and benefits, a delay that violates the specific requirements of the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, which requires reinstatement within 14 days of return. I did not, at the time, file a complaint about this delay. I wanted to preserve my working relationship with my boss. In January of this year, Michael removed me from the specific project leadership role I had held before my deployment. He assigned me to a smaller technical role that did not include the direct report team I had built over 3 years. He explained this reassignment as helping you get back up to speed after your absence. In April, Michael denied my request for 4 days of unpaid leave to attend a specific Army Reserve training course at Fort Devens. He required me to use paid vacation days for the training. This is also a violation of USERRA, which specifically prohibits requiring reservists to use civilian vacation for military duty. In July, Michael made a specific comment during a leadership meeting, captured on the meeting recording, in which he said, "Rachel's reserve stuff is really becoming a scheduling problem for us. I'm going to need to think about whether we can continue to accommodate it long term." I did not report any of these incidents. I chose to keep my head down. I chose to do good work. I chose to hope that Michael's specific hostility toward my reserve service would fade over time. That was my mistake. Because on Thursday, October 3rd, at 2:47 in the afternoon, Michael Reeves fired me for wearing my Army combat uniform to a work meeting. The meeting and the firing. I want to walk you through the specific chain of events that led to me wearing my Army combat uniform to a Meridian Systems work meeting on Thursday, October 3rd. My Army Reserve Unit, the 302nd Signal Battalion based at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, 47 miles northwest of Boston, was scheduled to conduct our monthly drill weekend beginning Friday, October 4th at 6 o'clock in the morning. This was standard scheduling. I had known about it since early September. Standard Reserve Drill Weekend requires me to report to Fort Devens by 6 a.m. Friday and remain on duty through 6 p.m. Sunday evening. Total drill weekend hours, approximately 36 hours of active military service across 3 days. On Monday, September 30th, I received a specific email from my reserve unit commander, Lieutenant Colonel James Anderson, informing me that our unit had been selected to participate in a specific joint training exercise with the Massachusetts National Guard. The exercise would begin on Thursday, October 3rd at 3 p.m., approximately 17 hours earlier than our regularly scheduled Friday morning drill start time. I was ordered to report to Fort Devens by 2:30 p.m. Thursday afternoon in Army combat uniform. I informed my boss, Michael Reeves, about this specific schedule change on Monday, September 30th, at 4:47 p.m. I sent him a formal email documenting the specific military orders. I attached the specific written notice from Lieutenant Colonel Anderson. I explained that I would need to leave Meridian Systems' Boston office at approximately 1 p.m. Thursday afternoon in order to arrive at Fort Devens on time. I also informed Michael that I would need to attend our Thursday morning executive strategy meeting, which had been on the calendar for 2 months, in my Army combat uniform, because I would not have time to change between the office and Fort Devens. Michael did not respond to my Monday email. On Tuesday, October 1st, at 9:14 a.m., I approached Michael at his office and asked him if he had received my email. He said he had. He said, in his specific dismissive tone that I had grown accustomed to over the previous 11 months, "Rachel, we'll figure it out." He did not say anything else. On Wednesday, October 2nd, I confirmed the Thursday schedule with Meridian's Human Resources Director, Patricia Blackwell. I asked her whether there were any specific corporate policy considerations I needed to be aware of regarding attending an executive meeting in military uniform. Patricia said, and I am quoting her exact words from the specific email she sent me at 3:47 p.m. that afternoon. "Rachel, there are no corporate policy restrictions on attendance in official military uniform for scheduled events. Please let me know if you need any additional support." I saved that email. On Thursday, October 3rd, at 9 a.m., I arrived at Meridian Systems' Boston office in my Army combat uniform. The uniform was clean, pressed, and inspection-ready. My captain's rank was visible on my collar. My name tape read, Foster. My unit patch showed the specific 302nd Signal Battalion insignia on my right shoulder. I walked through the reception area. 3 coworkers stopped me to say thank you for my service. One coworker, a specific software developer named Jennifer Torres, hugged me and told me her brother was serving in the Air Force in South Korea. I went to my desk. I worked on specific technical documentation until 10:47 a.m. At 11 a.m., I walked into the executive conference room for the scheduled strategy meeting. Michael Reeves was already seated at the head of the table. 12 other executives and senior managers were present. Michael stopped mid-sentence when he saw me. He looked at my uniform. He said, loudly enough for everyone in the room to hear, "Rachel, what are you wearing?" I said, "Michael, this is my Army combat uniform. I discussed this with you on Monday. I informed you in writing. I have military duty at Fort Devens beginning at 3 p.m. this afternoon. I will need to leave the office by 1 p.m. to arrive on time." Michael said, "Rachel, this is a corporate executive meeting. You are not authorized to attend in that costume." I did not respond immediately. The word costume landed on the specific mahogany conference table in a way that made 3 of my coworkers visibly wince. I said, "Michael, this is not a costume. This is the official uniform of the United States Army. I am attending this meeting in accordance with the schedule you and I confirmed on Monday." Patricia Blackwell in Human Resources confirmed in writing on Wednesday afternoon that there are no corporate policy restrictions on attending scheduled events in military uniform. Michael said, "Rachel, leave this meeting, now. Change out of that uniform or go home. I don't care which. But you are not attending this meeting looking like that." I looked around the conference room. 12 executives were watching me. I said, in the level voice that reserve officers develop for specific difficult moments, "Michael, I will leave the meeting, but I will not be changing my uniform, and I need to inform you that you have just made a specific statement that violates the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act." I stood up. I walked out of the executive conference room. I returned to my desk. I began composing a specific written memorandum documenting Michael's statements. At 2:47 p.m., approximately 3 hours and 47 minutes after I left the executive conference room, Michael Reeves and Patricia Blackwell walked to my desk together. Michael said, "Rachel, effective immediately, your employment at Meridian Systems is terminated. Please gather your personal belongings. Security will escort you out of the building." Patricia handed me a specific manila folder containing termination paperwork. The stated reason for my termination, written in the specific corporate legal language that Meridian's employment attorneys had drafted in the 90 minutes since Michael's confrontation with me, was failure to comply with executive attire standards and insubordination in a corporate executive setting. There was no mention of my reserve service. There was no mention of USERRA. There was no mention of the specific fact that I was, at that specific moment, wearing the uniform of the United States Army in accordance with lawful military orders. 2 security officers arrived at my desk at 3:14 p.m. I gathered my personal belongings, a specific framed photograph of my parents, a specific coffee mug, and a specific succulent plant my colleague Jennifer Torres had given me on my birthday. I was escorted out of the building at 3:23 p.m. I drove to Fort Devens. I arrived at 4:47 p.m., 1 hour and 47 minutes late for the joint training exercise. I did not tell my reserve unit commander what had happened in Boston that afternoon. I completed the drill weekend. I returned to Boston Sunday evening. Monday morning, I did not go to work. The new CEO and the federal complaint. I want to describe what happened between Monday morning, October 7th, and Monday afternoon, October 14th, because it is the week that ended Michael Reeves's career in the Boston technology sector. On Monday morning, October 7th, at 8:14 a.m., I received a specific phone call at my apartment in Cambridge from a phone number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer. I answered. A woman's voice said, "Captain Foster, this is Rebecca Callahan. I am the new Chief Executive Officer of Meridian Systems parent company. I began my role 47 minutes ago. I have just been briefed on your termination Thursday afternoon. I would like to invite you to attend a specific executive leadership meeting at Meridian's Boston office this morning at 9 a.m. Would you be willing to attend?" I said, "Colonel Callahan." "Yes, ma'am." Rebecca said, "Captain Foster, please wear your Army combat uniform." I said, "Colonel Callahan." "Yes, ma'am." I put on my Army combat uniform for the second time in 5 days. I drove to Meridian Systems Boston headquarters. I parked in the specific visitor parking area because my employee parking pass had been deactivated on Thursday afternoon. I walked into the reception area at 8:47 a.m. The receptionist, a specific woman named Angela Reyes, who had worked at Meridian for 11 years, looked up from her desk. She saw my uniform. She stood up. She said, "Captain Foster, please go directly to the executive conference room on the 42nd floor. Ms. Callahan has already asked security to escort you." I said, "Angela, thank you." I took the elevator to the 42nd floor. 2 security officers were waiting at the specific glass doors that led to the executive suite. One of them, a specific officer named Marcus Williams, had been one of the 2 officers who had escorted me out of the building on Thursday afternoon. He saw me. He straightened. He said, "Captain Foster, please, right this way." He escorted me to the executive conference room. He opened the door for me. I walked in. The executive conference room was, at 8:53 a.m., already occupied by 12 people. Michael Reeves, Patricia Blackwell, Douglas Harrington, 8 other senior executives, and Rebecca Callahan, standing at the head of the mahogany conference table in a specific navy blue business suit. Rebecca saw me. She smiled. She said, "Captain Foster, please take a seat at my right." I sat down at Rebecca Callahan's right hand. Michael Reeves looked at me. Michael looked at Rebecca. Michael's face went, in the specific description that Angela Reyes would later provide to Human Resources, the specific color of chalk. Rebecca began the meeting. She said, "Good morning. My name is Rebecca Callahan. I began serving as your new CEO 47 minutes ago. Before we discuss the strategic direction of this company, I need to address something that happened in this building on Thursday afternoon, and I need to introduce myself to those of you who may not know that I served as Captain Foster's battalion commander during her 8-month deployment to Kuwait last year." She opened her manila folder. She placed the specific photograph on the table. It showed me and Rebecca standing at Camp Buehring, Kuwait, in November of last year. Michael Reeves looked at the photograph. Patricia Blackwell looked at the photograph. Douglas Harrington looked at the photograph. Rebecca said, "For those of you who need clarification, I served 12 years on active duty in the United States Army before transitioning to the Army Reserve in 2004. I have served as a reserve officer for the past 20 years, currently holding the rank of colonel. I deployed to Kuwait from February to October of last year as the commanding officer of the 302nd Signal Battalion. Captain Foster served under my command during that entire deployment. She was, based on my direct observation over 8 months of combat theater operations, one of the specific finest officers I have commanded during my 32 years of military service." The room was silent. Rebecca continued, "On Thursday, October 3rd at 11 a.m., Captain Foster attended a scheduled executive strategy meeting in this room. She was wearing the Army combat uniform in accordance with lawful military orders issued by Lieutenant Colonel James Anderson of the 302nd Signal Battalion. She had informed Michael Reeves in writing of these orders on Monday, September 30th. She had confirmed her attendance in uniform with Human Resources Director Patricia Blackwell in writing on Wednesday, October 2nd. Rebecca placed 3 specific emails on the conference table. She said, "These are the specific written communications documenting Captain Foster's advance notification. Michael, Patricia, Can you confirm that these are the specific emails you received? Michael did not respond. Patricia said quietly, Ms. Callahan? Yes, those are the emails. Rebecca said, Thank you, Patricia. At 11:03 a.m. on Thursday, October 3rd, approximately 3 minutes after Captain Foster entered this room, Michael Reeves publicly referred to her official Army uniform as, quote, that costume. He ordered her to leave the meeting. He told her, quote, change out of that uniform or go home. These statements were recorded on the specific conference room audio-video system, which, as some of you may not have been aware, records all executive meetings for corporate governance and legal compliance purposes. Michael's face was, at this specific moment, no longer the color of chalk. It was, according to Angela Reyes's later description, the specific color of a person about to be sick. Rebecca said, at 2:47 p.m. on Thursday, October 3rd, Michael Reeves terminated Captain Foster's employment. The stated reason was, quote, failure to comply with executive attire standards and insubordination. There was no mention in the termination paperwork of Captain Foster's reserve service. There was no mention of USERRA. There was no acknowledgement that Captain Foster was, at the moment of her termination, wearing the uniform of the United States Army in accordance with federal military orders. Rebecca paused. She looked directly at Michael. She said, Michael Reeves, the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, codified at 38 U.S.C. sections 4311 through 4335, prohibits any employer from discriminating against, penalizing, or terminating any employee based on that employee's uniformed service. Section 4311 specifically prohibits discrimination based on wearing military uniform in accordance with lawful orders. Your termination of Captain Foster violates federal law. Your public reference to her uniform as a costume violates federal law. Your requirement that she change out of her uniform violates federal law. Do you understand what I am telling you, Michael? Michael said. Ms. Callahan, Rebecca said, Michael, your employment at Meridian Systems is terminated for cause, effective immediately. Douglas Harrington in our General Counsel's office will handle the specific documentation. You will not receive severance. You will not receive any performance-based compensation. You will, based on the specific investigation the Department of Labor will be conducting, following the formal complaint I filed at 8:03 this morning, personally face professional consequences that will extend well beyond your termination from this company. Do you understand? Michael said, Yes. Rebecca said, Patricia, as Human Resources Director, you had a specific legal and professional obligation to prevent this termination. You confirmed to Captain Foster in writing that her uniform attendance was authorized. You then signed her termination paperwork 3 hours later without correcting Michael's decision. Your employment at Meridian Systems is also terminated for cause, effective immediately. Patricia Blackwell began to cry. Rebecca said, Douglas Harrington, as Chief Financial Officer, you authorized Captain Foster's final paycheck to be reduced by $3,000 for, quote, unauthorized absence from work premises. Captain Foster was not absent from work premises. She was, at the specific moment you authorized that reduction, driving to Fort Devens in accordance with lawful military orders. That reduction violates federal wage payment law. You will be reassigned to a specific advisory role reporting directly to me for the next 6 months, during which the board of directors will determine whether you will remain with this company. Douglas said, Yes, Ms. Callahan. Rebecca turned to me. She said, Captain Foster, your termination is rescinded. Your employment at Meridian Systems is reinstated effective 8 a.m., Thursday, October 3rd. You will receive full back pay, benefits restoration, and, pursuant to the settlement agreement my legal team is currently drafting, a specific compensation package for the specific harm caused by your wrongful termination. That settlement, when finalized, will total $340,000. You will additionally be promoted, effective today, to the position of Vice President of Engineering, replacing Michael Reeves. Is this acceptable to you, Captain Foster? I said, Ms. Callahan. Yes, ma'am. Rebecca said, Captain Foster, please stand up. We have work to do. After, I want to tell you what happened over the next 6 months, because it matters. The Department of Labor's Employer Supportive Guard and Reserve Office opened a formal USERRA investigation into Meridian Systems on Wednesday, October 9th. The investigation was completed in December. The findings identified 12 separate violations of USERRA committed against me during the 11-month period between my return from deployment and my termination. Michael Reeves was named personally as the specific individual responsible for each of the 12 violations. The Department of Labor's findings were forwarded to the Massachusetts State Professional Licensing Boards and to the specific Boston area technology industry trade associations, resulting in Michael's removal from the Massachusetts Technology Leadership Council and from 3 specific corporate advisory board positions he had held. He has not, at the time I am telling you this story, been hired by any Boston area technology company. He now works as a mid-level operations manager at a small manufacturing company in New Hampshire. Patricia Blackwell surrendered her Society for Human Resource Management certification voluntarily in November. She has, according to Angela Reyes's specific mention to me at Meridian's holiday party, moved to Florida to be near her adult son. Douglas Harrington remained at Meridian Systems through his 6-month advisory period. He was, in April, formally reassigned to a specific junior finance role in Meridian's Toronto office. He accepted the reassignment. Meridian Systems Board of Directors approved a specific Veterans Employment Council in November. The council was designed to review all employment decisions involving Reserve and Guard members and to provide direct oversight of USERRA compliance. I was appointed as the founding chair of the council. Rebecca Callahan serves as the executive sponsor. The Department of Labor now uses my specific case, with my written consent, as a training example in its annual USERRA compliance workshops for Fortune 500 human resources professionals. The case is referred to in Department of Labor training materials as the Foster case. Rebecca Callahan continues to serve as the Chief Executive Officer of Meridian Systems' parent company. She has, based on her own quiet mention over dinner in February, been contacted by 3 specific defense industry employers about potentially moving to a defense sector executive role. She has declined. She said, at that specific February dinner, "Rachel, I have been in uniform for 32 years. My reserve career will end in 2027, when I hit my mandatory retirement age. The specific work I want to do for the last decade of my professional career is to build a corporate culture where people like you never again have to choose between their military service and their civilian career. Meridian is where I can do that. I am not leaving." I was promoted to Vice President of Engineering in October, replacing Michael Reeves. My total compensation package for the first year includes the specific settlement compensation Rebecca had described, the specific back pay for my delayed reinstatement violation, and my regular VP compensation, totaling approximately $640,000. I used approximately 1/3 of the settlement to pay off my student loans from officer candidate school. I used another third to fund a specific scholarship at the Sloan School of Management at MIT for military members transitioning to civilian executive careers. I saved the remainder. My Army Reserve service continues. I completed my monthly drill weekends on schedule throughout the winter. I attended my 2-week annual training at Fort Bliss, Texas in May. I was promoted to major on the specific promotion list issued by the Army Reserve Personnel Command on July 15th. I will pin on my new rank in September, 7 months after my original wrongful termination. Rebecca Callahan will preside over my promotion ceremony. She has, according to her specific mention at Meridian's summer leadership offsite, been carrying my major's rank insignia in the specific drawer of every desk I have occupied since I signed your Army Commendation Medal citation in Kuwait last October. I want to tell you one final specific thing. The photograph Rebecca placed on the conference table on Monday morning, October 7th, the specific photograph of the 2 of us standing at Camp Buehring, Kuwait, in November of last year, is currently framed on the wall of my office on the 42nd floor of Meridian Systems' Boston headquarters. Directly across from that photograph, on the opposite wall of my office, is a specific framed copy of my termination paperwork from Thursday, October 3rd. Rebecca Callahan asked me, in a quiet moment during the Meridian Systems leadership offsite in June, why I had chosen to frame my own termination paperwork. I told her the truth. I told her that I had chosen to keep the paperwork visible in my office because the specific young reservist who might, at some future date, be walking through the specific corridor outside my office deserves to see that the specific worst thing a company can do to a reserve officer is the specific worst thing that a reserve officer's civilian career can survive. Rebecca said, "Rachel, That is exactly why I hired you as VP of Engineering. If you have ever been the reservist, or the guardsman, or the civilian coworker who watched a specific person's military service become a specific inconvenience to the specific boss who did not understand what the uniform meant, I want you to leave one word in the comments below. Just one word. The name of the unit, or the name of the boss, or the name of the CEO who eventually made it right. Say the word. Because someone in this comment section is going to see your word, and they are going to remember that the specific 800,000 reserve and guard members serving the United States today deserve to work in the specific companies that understand what the uniform costs. And if this story reminded you that the officers who commanded us in combat sometimes end up running the companies where we work, subscribe, because next video, I am telling you about a hotel manager who refused my Purple Heart discount. A retired admiral was standing behind me in line. I'll see you there.